Welcome back to the Olga S Show. I'm your host, Olga, and how you doing? How's everybody doing? What's going on? I have a special guest here today, Robert Phoenix. I can't wait to introduce you to him and have him here. I'm clearly a lot nervous. I'm a huge fan. He's amazing. I'll tell you all about him. But just in case, for the listeners out there on the podcast or YouTube, this is adult content. Can't take the heat. You might want to not be in this kitchen. That kind of a thing, right? So, I do my little intro. Adult content and viewer discretion advised. Yes, so we are live, my friends. Welcome. If you're here in the live chat, make sure to leave a chat, question, comment. Your comments are my fuel. Keep them coming. I will read them and I will respond. Even if you're watching this replay, definitely leave a comment. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, make sure to hit the all notification bell because that means everything, especially when I'm having the announcement that I'm coming on live, and then you click the notification bell. So it's like, notify me. You know what I mean? So we can definitely be together live, right? Because that's the point for us to chat, to talk, to get in to the latest news, trending topics. Robert is quite, he's got an extensive background, but again, his energy, his wisdom, his wit. I don't miss any of his podcasts. And he's got like three different channels, I think, at this point. Well, I'm about to introduce you to him. But hey, AC, hola, Olga, exclamation, how you doing? Bolt, heart, and as you say, hanging low, right? Chilling out, mahalo. I love it. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. You're such a great moderator. I mean, I'm so happy we've connected, to say the least. Yeah, so what's up? I don't know. It's a little quiet today. I'm wondering if, did anybody miss the notification? Give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I don't see Mr. Robert Phoenix. I'm just making sure that that everything's working all right. The link, he's going to be joining us remotely. And yeah, I'm like, so far, I would usually see a pop-up. But yeah, so we talked about like how what are we going to start with today? What are we going to talk? And I'm like, I just want to shoot the shit. Let's just shoot the shit. Like, let's talk about whatever. Obviously, what's happening lately. FTX, the arrest. I know we talked about it in my coffee talk yesterday, but I can't wait to see what Robert Phoenix has to say because he actually just did a podcast yesterday and he talked a lot about it. So I don't know if he wants to get into it all over again, but I think because a lot of people are like, what's trending besides Fauci lied on Twitter, right? Hashtag Fauci lied. And then there was, the whole Epstein, like, is he going to be Epstein? And not Fauci, sorry. The FTX dude, the I believe Robert said in his podcast yesterday, he said, Friedman fraud? No, Bankman fraud instead of fried. Anyway, you guys know me. I'm always messing stuff up. Dyslexia, whatever. I'm obviously uber excited. Look at me. I'm already verklempt. You know when I'm excited about something, it just happens. Get all fired up. So Robert is here. And right, without further ado, let me read you a little bit. A quick bio of Robert Phoenix. He's a working astrologer since 2008 and has done thousands of personal readings during that space. In addition to working with individuals, Robert practices mundane astrology. which is basically using astrology as a lens through which to view the world at large, whether it's politics, history, sports, music, or what we call culture. In 2013/14, he was a producer / presenter of the 11th House, in quote, on Gaia TV. To this day, it's one of the Gaia's most popular segments on astrology. In addition to Gaia, Robert has appeared on Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, the Higher Side Chats, Off Planets Radio, Quite Frankly, and many other alternative media channels and streams. He started podcasting in 2010 and now streams his own show, 50 Minutes of Flame, end quote. Love that show. And 15 Minutes of Flame.com, Tuesdays through Thursday, 9:11 to 10:41 a.m. CST time, where he looks at issues of the day, breaks them down, connects dots, and at times skewers them with a rather dark sense of humor. It's, I'm saying, I can't miss any of his stuff. I'm telling you guys, it's amazing. On Fridays, 12 p.m. CST time, he hosts the Friday Farcast, where he interviews cutting-edge thinkers and doers committed to truth and authentic expression. His 11th House channel on YouTube on Sunday nights, he streams a pure astrology show on for 3 hours on the same YouTube channel. To book a personal reading with Robert, you can go visit him at www.robertphoenix.com. And without further ado, drum rolls, please welcome the amazing Robert Phoenix.
Wow, that was quite the intro. Thanks, Olga.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Yeah, my audience knows I get verklempt. I don't know if you've already heard me.
Verklempt, I love that word.
I learned that as soon as I guess.
Moved to Jersey?
Yeah. I would just hear it. People would say it all the time. Like, what is that? You know, me being born in Italy and raised in Spain.
Right.
So how you doing? How's your day?
I'm good. I'm hearing a little echo. Why is that?
Oh, I don't know.
Is there an echo filter?
Oh, you know what? Maybe. Huh.
It's the Virgo in me. Sorry.
Yeah, the Virgo. I love it. So I'm going to click on your... Oh, you know what? Hold on. I just unclicked echo on your settings. Is it better now?
Let's see. Still there.
Really? It's still there?
Yeah, let me
make
click
sure
click echo one more time. Or prevent echo, whatever that is.
I don't know.
Let me see my audio. Let's make sure here.
Welcome, everyone.
It's on me.
It's on your side?
I just hit echo cancellation.
You did that?
Yeah.
Did it work?
No. It's okay. I can work through it.
Oh, no. Well, if you want, maybe I can, like...
No, we're here now. Let's just do it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone that's in the live chat already. Guys, let me know in the chat. Have you heard of Robert Phoenix? Have you looked him up after I've posted him? Kelly, welcome. Welcome who you want to be. She goes, I seem to be the only one that got the notification. You got the memo, huh, Kelly? Jeff Prater, welcome. Damn, looking good, Olga. How you doing? Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I have to represent. I have a special guest here, Robert. I mean, seriously, I actually washed my hair today.
I did the same thing for you. I did the same thing for you, by the way.
You did?
I did. I took a shower between my show and your show. So I actually looked better on your show than I did on my show. I'm glad I did because you set the bar pretty high.
Oh my God. And we didn't plan on it. It's not like I said, hey, I'm going to be all decked out. But you know, it's the holidays. Like I put my little holiday scarf.
I know. You know?
And then look at you with your Christmas tree background.
It's a chintzy Christmas. But I got into the aluminum tree thing today. So did you ever have an aluminum tree growing up?
I think we did once that I can remember I do. Or at least, I don't know if maybe somebody else in the family or neighbor had it because I remember having it. But I don't know if we have pictures of it. I think we do. We had to. That was a huge thing back in the day.
It was. It was a big deal. Everybody had an aluminum tree at least once. And then they had the color wheel, right? The color wheel. It was a lamp, and then they had red, yellow, blue, green, and it was a lens, and it would turn. And so they would have the colors on the aluminum tree, right? That in lieu of lights, because I think the light thing was a fire hazard.
It was.
With the aluminum tree. That was big danger.
Or even with the
So
stencils. Wasn't it called stencils? The things you would throw on the real tree?
the tinsel.
Tinsel, see?
Tinsel, yeah, right, yeah. So the aluminum tree is just a big tinsel tree, really, is what it is. And I guess Reynolds Aluminum must have loved it, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Hey, so I caught your intro. You're good, Olga. I think you're going to be a hit at this.
Say that again?
You're good. You're going to be a hit.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Well, thanks to my wonderful audience that has been with me since I was nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, it's so amazing when you have nothing, or no one notices you. You don't exist. And then all of a sudden, one person, two people, and then you get 4 subscribers, 5 subscribers, and you're like, A, people are seeing me. B, they like me. They subscribed, right. You know, in the most humble way, you know. And I'm going now to see the people that have started with me since basically the beginning. I'm always grateful. I'm always telling everyone how grateful I am. You know, how wonderful it feels, right, to connect, not to like be famous or get all these subscribers and, you know, want to be like Insta famous or anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. So what do you think is the highlight of today? Fauci,
well, being on your show,
you
right now, being on your show is the highlight of my day.
That's me too. That you're on.
Those are lowlights. Those are lowlights of the day. I'm happy to slum in the lowlights if we want to. By the way, I call him Sam Bankman-fried.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, wait. And I actually wrote down the one you said about Fauci. You go. At some point you went, short little shit bag.
That's what he is.
I was like, yes.
And I never want, because there are men, well, I'll say men. There are men who are not so tall that listen to my show. So I don't want to offend those men because, you know, they listen to me and they're good guys and I've met a lot of them. But historically, if you look at the shit bags in history, they're all pretty small.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I think Stalin was what, 5'5"?
Yeah.
Mao is 5'4". We know how tall Fauci is. He's what, about 5'3"? So there seems to be a correlation here between the lack of height and then the gross overreach of their personal power and domain. And ironically, Napoleon was actually taller.
I was just going to mention Napoleon.
No, he was actually taller than they made him out to be. So Napoleon was kind of, canceled a little bit, right? Like he was historically canceled. Like, oh, he's a tiny guy. Napoleon complex. He was actually taller than they said he was.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going with that.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you think about the whole Napoleon complex?
Right. I think we should name it the Fauci complex. Let's
get
no
it up. Napoleon.
Let's update the model. It needs an upgrade.
Isn't Fauci a Capricorn? Napoleon was a Leo.
Napoleon's a Leo. Fauci's a Capricorn. Yeah. And he's, I believe, 2 degrees Capricorn. So he's right at the beginning of the sign. And what's really interesting is that when the whole COVID thing hit, can we talk about COVID here? I don't want to get you.
Oh yeah, I call it crotch 19 just to be funny.
Right. So when the whole thing hit, it happened astrologically under 2 interesting transits. One, Saturn went into Aquarius, and it was like with Aquarius, we all experience something globally or simultaneously. That's Aquarius. It's the group. It's group consciousness. It's a group theater, and Saturn makes that experience more difficult. There's more gravity. There's more pressure, especially early on with Saturn and Aquarius. You'll see the fingerprints all over the place. So there are 2 other examples I bring up with Saturn and Aquarius historically. One is on November 22nd, 1963, when Kennedy gets assassinated. Saturn's in Aquarius. And so were brought into this global event with Kennedy. It's really the first kind of global event that we experience because of television. He's the first television president. And if you look at the run up to 1963 and November 22nd, there are all kinds of interesting words that were being used to describe the Kennedy regime, like Camelot. That was, and Camelot is another version of this kind of Edenic experience. And then, of course, with Camelot, we know that there's a fall with Camelot, but that's what they were talking about. And America was really kind of up and to the right. We were really coming out of World War II, 1960s, officially the birth of the transistor age. And of course, Kennedy's hyping the moon, and some very interesting things were happening. And then all of a sudden, boom, the plug gets pulled. And we go into this deep trauma post-Kennedy. Johnson comes in, and then what he does is he begins to enact sort of the worst of the Aquarian models, which is the Great Society, which is a very Aquarian ideal, and the war on poverty. Like, we're going to make everybody equal, right? This is where we first start to see this stuff. So we see these programs get inserted with Saturn in Aquarius, and everybody's going to experience that thing together theoretically. And so that ushers in the 60s and a bunch of MK Ultra stuff and timeline divergence. The next example happens during the presidency of George Herbert Walker Bush. And we go through the 80s, and everything is starting to get really frothy in the 80s. We're having all these festivals. There's Live Aid, there's Farm Aid. Again, we're starting to experience kind of the nascent beginnings of a global culture. And even with something like the harmonic convergence, which happens during the 80s, is part and parcel of that. So it's like, oh, wow, technology's coming on. People becoming aware of each other in a global sense. And it's a good vibe, right? Like, the 80s have a bit of a 60s feel to it because of all the festivals, and all the festivals show up in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And then Bush comes in and basically slams the door shut on that, redirects everything, Saturn and Aquarius, and starts talking about now all that starts to happen with Saturn and Capricorn. But Saturn and Aquarius, he starts to really get into things like the Coalition of the Willing, 1,000 Points of Light, the Iraq War. And if people were around back then, it was a big deal. It was a big global effort where all these countries, it was like World War II. And Saddam Hussein was another Hitler. I wonder if you heard that before.
Yeah.
Right. So they hijack these Saturn and Aquarius moments. They hijack the collective, and they hijack these timelines. And so that's what happened during Bush. And next thing you know, we're mired in Iraq, which, by the way, gets a reboot under his son, right, after 9/11, 2001. And Saturn was in Gemini then, which is lower octave Aquarius. But I digress a little bit. So here we go. We're moving back into Saturn and Aquarius. And what do we experience? We experience this global thing. And prior to that, I mean, even if you go back to like 2016, 2017, even up to 2018, we were looking at the rise of nationalism. So in the UK or England, you had Nigel Farage, right? You had Trump in the United States. Bolsonaro comes along. And we're starting to see Orban in Hungary, right? We're starting to see these leaders begin to give two more shits about their country, for the most part, not in all cases, than what's going on globally. It's a movement away from this kind of globalist order, which had really taken hold under Bush. I mean, that's when the whole globalist order really comes on. In fact, he gives a famous speech about the New World Order, and that's where we hear about it for the very first time.
Yes. I remember seeing it live, and I remember thinking, is anyone else paying attention to this?
And if I'm not mistaken, it was on 9/11, 1990 or 91. I can't forget these, but it was on 9/11.
It was.
That's right.
And it was I think it was 91.
I think it was 91, and he gives the New World Order speech.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real wake-up call for me. Anyway, so here we are. We're coming into this period where people are thinking, well, we don't really need, the top-down kind of global mandates. We don't need these things. In fact, if we can begin to experience them nationally, maybe we can shrink them even more and, get into the state level or the county level or the city level or whatever, right? So we're moving away from this kind of overarching global model, and it's kind of moving backwards into, things that people can relate to. And then all of a sudden we get the whole COVID thing, and that happens when Saturn goes into Aquarius. So here we are, we're witnessing this global event more than any other global event. And even when you go back and look at Kennedy, it really impacted the United States and other countries who knew of Kennedy. Kennedy had been to Germany and gave his great German speech. So there was some feeling for Kennedy, right? There was some feeling for him. But this was more global than anything we'd ever experienced. And it happens right at the beginning of Saturn in Capricorn. And at that time, I also worked with something called the nodes, the ascending node and descending node. So the ascending node was in Cancer at that time, when everything was starting to, get really contracted and compacted, and people were going home for 2 weeks to stop the spread. That actually starts to take place in the final degrees of the south node, the north node in Cancer, right? So that's down around 2 degrees, 1 degree, right around there. And you could actually track it because they had the NFL draft. And it was the one time the NFL draft in recent memory had been canceled, because normally they go to these cities and it's a big deal. It's very Bucknellian, whatever.
Right.
But they were doing the NFL draft at home. So you had Bill Belichick making the pick for the Patriots with his dog, in his studio. And so other GMs would have their family around. So this is all very Cancerian stuff, right? And the South Node at that time was in Capricorn. And I really felt like Fauci's reign would not be as long as it was because of where the South Node was going and where his sun was at 2 degrees. I'm thinking this guy's going to get erased. And there was a weird period of time right around that time where Trump finally started to freeze him out a little bit. And you could see like his body language like this when he was talking. And Trump knew like something was up with Fauci. And so he was doing everything in his power to marginalize him. And that was happening right around when the South Node was on Fauci's sun. Now, Fauci is a Capricorn. And at that time, Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, was in Aquarius. So what happened? Fauci became the high priest. He became the high priest of science. That's right. He became the high priest of science. So he actually
he is the science. Don't you know that, Robert?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
He is the science.
Right. Just like Obama is hope.
Yes.
Oh, hope and change. Yes. That's me. What are you talking about? I'm the hope. I'm the change. I'm the science. Right. So that's what you have to do. You just have to say, I am talk. Talk radio? No, I am talk radio. What are you talking about? Live streaming? I am live streaming. That's a Leo thing. You should use that.
Yeah, I will.
Anyway, that's what happened during that time. And we can see the astrology getting played out in this, short little shit bag made everybody's life hell. And not only that, but in Gemini, when the nodes moved into Gemini, nobody knew what the truth was. Oh, masks work, masks don't work. And this is all coming out of his mouth. Oh, yeah, we can get herd immunity, natural immunity. Oh, then now you got to get a shot. Now you got to get nobody knew what to think. And that was all by design, by the way. All that stuff is by design to confuse the hell out of people.
Yes.
Because now you've got, it's all cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
You got this guy who's very grandfatherly. Like, oh, he's the nice grandpa. Trump is the evil dad. We like nice grandpa. Nice grandpa brings us lollipops.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember the first time I saw him.
Laced with anthrax. No, I'm just kidding. So
good one.
Anyway, this is what happened during that time. And then we get into Gemini and it all just goes to hell. Yeah. The summer of Floyd in 2020. And we haven't really recovered from that. It's my opinion that we experienced a coup.
Oh, for sure.
It was a purple revolution, just like all these other color revolutions that the CIA and all the other alphabet agencies have sponsored. And that's what happened in the summer of 2020. So we're in the back end of a coup. And it doesn't feel very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And like what direction? See, everyone thinks also now that, Saint Elon Musk, right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was also commenting about it when he was going to take Twitter over, when he did take Twitter over, because just any change is better than nothing, right? Just the living the lie and knowing, guys, you're shadow banning, you're doing everything. It's clear. We didn't even need the proof, in my opinion. But okay, if some people need to see it, I think it's more like a talking point. Like, okay, let's just, I hate to say this, but it's almost like saying, like throwing a dog a bone. You know what I mean? Like let you have something to chew on and on. It's like, but at the end of the day, now all of a sudden it's like Saint Elon, or that's how it's feeling. Like he's the God, he's the savior. And I'm going, I'm all about owning your own shit.
Right.
Being in charge of yourself. Being the master of thyself, and so that nothing that comes at you can brainwash you, take you, confuse you. And that's also the part of the coup, is where we get to the point where we don't believe anything.
That's right.
Go ahead.
No, that's a great point. And I've talked about this before, because the whole idea is to break down so-called reality to the point where we have absolutely no mooring and no footing. So for instance, you have things like flat Earth, Tartaria, all these things, and I think there's a there with Tartaria, by the way, and we can talk about maybe some other time. But what it does is it calls into question this whole idea of history. Then you have Fomenko and Fomenko's theory of time, which is again very interesting, but contradicts the Western version of it. So you have a lot of people who say, well, we don't believe history. And that's just on one side. Then you have the other side, which is, well, the white man told the history, and that's not really the history, and this is the real history. So you have another group that doesn't believe history either. So you have these people that don't agree on history, and then they don't even believe in history. And then the version of history that some people believe in isn't even the real history. Like you could go into World War I and World War II and find all kinds of inconsistencies,
right,
in both of those wars, right? And that's the historical version that a lot of people believe in. So there's that. Then you have these events where there's public shootings, and you look around and you say, well, feels a little psyopy to me.
A little?
Yeah, right. A little psyopy to me. So then how can we trust the events, right? So there's that. Now, a buddy of mine, Howdy McCoskey, wrote a book called Exiting Plato's Cave, and he talks about what happens after a person leaves their body. And his whole thing is you have these archons who will basically trick you into reincarnating, and so you just become another battery for the fake universe.
Talk about the Matrix.
Yeah, you become a battery for the fake universe. And I believe that there's some truth to that, by the way.
Me too.
I don't discount that at all.
No.
But let's add it up now. So history's a lie. Reality, simulation, right?
Death. We have the quantum physics to even back it up.
Well, but all these things lead to a very nihilistic approach to life.
Yes.
Because if you take all of that in on face value, then what are you doing here? Like, what's there to live for? Now, some people may say, well, that could be a real breakthrough moment. Like, that's when God sneaks in, when there's no hope, there's no light, you're in this kind of purgatory. Let's call it a purgatory, because that's really what it is. And then all of a sudden you get to, have, the meeting with Beatrice, and you get to climb out of Dante's Inferno. So there could be some validity to that, but is that also part of the plan? just to completely demoralize and disorient people to the point where they believe in nothing.
Right.
And I think I think there can be kind of a nihilistic redemption with that, but it's not a path for everybody. Not everybody can make it through that. Some people, they wind up in a tent city if they go down that path too far. So I think we have to redefine meaning in our lives.
Yes.
And find things that bring more of a sense of wholeness to where we are and what we're experiencing, or else we're just, going to be at the beck and call of whatever the next program is.
Yes. Well, just the fact that everyone's like, who's going to be the next president? I'm going. So I have Uranus in the first house. Literally.
Love it.
I can't remember how many degrees at this moment, but I have a Libra ascendant, Aquarius. I'm sorry, Aquarius, because Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. But it's like I literally have 0 degrees in Libra ascendant in the first house, obviously, and then there's Uranus. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I'm saying this is because since I can remember, friends, colleagues, whatever, they're like, they'll love the way I think about how we should be living or the future, but they'll say, you're just born ahead of your time. You've heard that. We've said that, right? Mm-hmm. To other people many times, right? You're born. I'm going, am I really born ahead of my time? It's just, I'm, that with the Uranus disrupting energy that I naturally have, I'm going, and so we're living this now. Like, I'm going to use this example of everyone, like, who's going to be the president? Who's going to run? Again, you're looking for another savior. Do we not see that the system that we created, not me personally, maybe not you personally either, right? But the system we were born into or made to believe in, we've already seen how messed up it is. I mean, and if you read Plato, right, and you read about the Republic of Plato, and I'm thinking, well, obviously, if the next generations are not being educated, they don't even know. I've asked my interns, do you know Plato? I think I've heard of him once, twice. It's crazy. And it's like, okay, do me a favor. Don't talk to me until you go read that book. Like, as far as like, what do they say about absolute power?
Corrupts absolutely.
Right. So I'm going, so again, we're going to put all our eggs in one basket and have faith in somebody who's going to save us. Unless it's Jesus Christ, but then going back to what you mentioned about Howdy, because I did start following him after you had him on your show, was a couple weeks ago, I think it was.
A couple months, but yeah.
Or a couple months ago. Oh, wow, time flies.
It does really fly.
I've been really watching pretty much all his content since then, or I've delved down to some of, his older videos, and I looked up at that book. Haven't read it yet. But I was in Palm Springs in October, and a friend of mine who's very, very deep, and we get in this conversation. He knows me well spiritually and all that, but I actually went down the Howdy perspective, and I go, didn't I tell you that I told you that even like, because the Bible's also been edited, like it's all been things taken out, things added, however you want to call it, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't trust. And I remember as a child, my parents put me in a convent. In a boarding school that was literally a convent for women to become nuns. Don't even get me started. And I remember that, I remember thinking that something is just not right. But just like a little kid, I was 10 years old, 11, 12 years old, I was just instinctually like, this is all bullshit. Like, not that God is, but what they're doing with it, how they're interpreting it, how they're trying to explain it. It was just, I actually lost my thought. Forget it. It had to do with Howdy. Yes, that's what it was. That I had this whole, that this was a game. And that if anything, we were monkeys kind of, and I don't mean monkeys like there's anything wrong with monkeys or anything like that, but just, we're programmed, right? We learn things, we imitate from each other. We do what the other person does, or we want what the other person wants. I mean, that's very basic, human animal instinct.
Sure.
But I remember one time I was riding my bicycle, not in the boarding school because I wasn't allowed to get out. They didn't let us out. And I remember for some reason, something just told me to stop. I stopped the bicycle and I look, and this is Spain, and I look at the terrace with everybody eating outside. And typically back in the day, especially, everyone after church would go out to eat, big tables, all sitting outside because we were in the south of Spain at that time as well. So it's beautiful out, all that. And I remember something just said, stop, just look at this. And I look, and I started to realize we're really nothing more. And I'm not saying that we're not incredible beings, but at that very moment, I go, everyone's just like, if they eat with a knife and fork, that's been taught. Somebody made it up and it's taught. And then you keep doing it and you repeat it. And I go, everybody here is fake, to make a long story short. I go, everybody's fake and they don't even know it. So that was at like 12. I guess it was intermittent. Maybe when I went home, sometimes I went home for the summer while I was in the boarding school. But anyway, so going back to the howdy and the ahead of my times. And when I went to Palm Springs in October and I tell my friend, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I just love the way that howdy could explain it in a way I couldn't. I just knew this is what I feel, that I've always felt as a kid. But of course, oh, Olga, you're crazy. And people would just laugh like, oh, she's a Leo. She's crazy. She's Spanish. Like, I would hear it all. Oh, she's American. Because if I was in Spain, oh, she's American. She's crazy. Like those Americans over there. I couldn't win.
Right.
And I love that howdy has done some research, and I'm with you to go.
Yeah. I don't fully agree with howdy, by the way. But I do agree on a number of things that he brings up. Like, for instance, the whole idea of reincarnation as part of the Earth School.
Yeah,
and that we've been sold this idea that, well, we're supposed to just get better with each successive lifetime. And he brought up a really simple fact. If you're going through school, and this is the old school, this is not the new school, right? But like when you and I went to school, you would demonstrate a level of knowledge, and then you go to the next grade.
Right.
When you went from 4th grade to 5th grade, they didn't wipe out 1 through 4, and then you start 5th grade.
Right.
The whole idea is you would continue to assimilate knowledge so that eventually you would graduate, which flies in the face of this model of reincarnation. If really there's a benevolent God, and the benevolent God, this is his model. The benevolent God is invested in all of us graduating from the Earth School. And why wouldn't you remember your theoretical past lives, right?
Right.
You would remember them and say, well, I remember I did this 3 lifetimes ago when I was an asshole in North Africa or wherever, right? And I sold those. And I sold asshole. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I heard you right.
When I was an asshole in North Africa, whatever,
I've been there.
But 3 lifetimes ago, right? So you remember that. And you go, well, I don't have to do that this time.
Right.
But it's not set up that way because of the memory wipe. So I resonate with that a lot. And if that's true, if really we're here to progress through these incarnations, then.
Yeah, but how do you explain to like you don't? Like you just end up.
Well, you don't. No, you don't. But I'm using the opposite model that if we were, then we'd be able to remember things. But we don't. So that model is a bill of goods.
Right.
And a lot of New Age people are really invested in that.
Right.
They're invested in that model. And the other part is karma. And the whole karma thing, I think people just lean into it like way too much.
I agree.
Way too much. And I had this really interesting encounter with a guy I was around 19 years old, 20. And I was working at this apartment complex. And I think it was 79. So back then, this is all pre-AIDS and again, whatever that was.
I remember.
And they would have these apartment complexes that were set up for singles. Like if you were single, this apartment complex was made to mingle. And I was
This was in South Africa?
No, I've never been to Africa.
Oh.
I was using that as a past life example.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I was. But I was an asshole back in that time too, which was in my late teens. At times, not all the time, but at times. So I worked at this apartment complex, and I worked in I was the assistant rec director. So this is the 70s. There's a lot of drugs, Quaaludes, Coke, weed. People are drinking, they're hooking up. It was very, very lascivious. But there was this guy that lived there who was older, and he did not fit the bill. So I began a friendship with him. And he was like really esoteric. And I'd call him like my first spiritual teacher. And so he would hand me Xerox copies of excerpts from Ruth Montgomery's book on Edgar Cayce. So he hooked me with Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce was my gateway drug. And so I started to read the Casey stuff, I'm like, man, I really dig this.
Yeah, me too. I did it.
I could dig living like this guy. Sounds very enlightened to me. So then he started to bring in more and more material, and we would have these conversations. And I brought up karma one time, and he just flat looked at me. He says, "It doesn't exist." I'm like, "What do you mean it doesn't exist? It's just a concept. That's all it is, just a concept." And I thought about that. I'm like, wow, I believe that. I agree with that. It's just a concept. And it's a concept in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that there isn't some kind of governor for how people's behavior gets replayed back to them. But I think that's different than what we would call karma. So the whole idea with karma, obviously, is that we do something and we do something good and we get something good back from it, or we do something bad and we reap the results from it.
Right.
But I guarantee you that the so-called elite, they don't believe in karma at all.
Oh no, because they're living for the moment, right? They're living for who
well,
said
they're
it?
either living for the moment or for the next 100 years, and they're willing to do whatever they want. So for some, that's easy to do. And for others, it's a bit more tricky because some people have a conscience. And then they have, of course, they have this ceremony called the cremation of care.
Mm-hmm.
And the cremation of care essentially wipes out an individual's ability to care about anything. So it eliminates whatever kind of pangs of conscience that they might have when it comes to doing things that the rest of us may blanch or hesitate at. And so that's part of it. But the elites know that this whole karma thing is something that they've helped create and foster as a concept. And again, that doesn't mean that you're not
But they
accountable.
think they're special, right? They think that their blood and their,
I think that's part of it, but I also think they're just pulling one over on us because they understand the spiritual law that we don't necessarily understand, and they don't abide by it.
But as long as they can convince us.
Well, yeah, and even so, I asked Howdy, and this is a question he couldn't answer, but if that's true, and they understand the same dynamics that he and other people have talked about, then what's their experience like when they leave their body? Do they stare the archons, right in the eyes and say, "Look, I know what you're doing, and I demonstrated down there that I exactly knew what you were doing. So therefore, I'm free from this cycle." He couldn't really answer that. Because if it's true, then that at a high level, the so-called elites or these archons know exactly what's going on.
Mm.
And even after the body, they know what's going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a little bit of a digression. But
no, actually, I was thinking that whole when I went off with the whole monkey and the convent and all that, I finally wrote down where I lost my thought, and it was that part where you were talking about history, right? What is true history? What is the truth of any of it, right? And then everyone thinks they know everything, and that's where I was getting at, where whether people are more educated today or less educated than back in our day, it's at the end of the day, you sit down with someone like before iPhones, right? Before smartphones, right? You would argue with someone. I remember I've done it many times, right? Like something stupid as far as like, Massachusetts is not part of New England. And there was a teacher that was telling me this. I'm like, I actually lived in Massachusetts. I lived in Boston. But regardless, it doesn't make me know everything, but they were a teacher and they thought they knew everything. My point is, we didn't have Google to go, wait, hold on, let me Google it. Or, hey, Siri, right? Or, hey, Alexa, tell me. And my thing is, it doesn't matter. So we all gain all this knowledge, and then we're all wasting so much time talking about, no, this was the truth. No, this is the truth. Or you just end up saying, there is no truth. Like, how about we just do that? How about you're wrong, I'm wrong, and now what are we going to do? You know what I'm saying?
Right. So I do believe that there's an objective truth. I do believe that, like if I were to, strangle my cat here, right? The objective truth would be that would be inhumane, and cruel. And I would agree with that, right? That's a pretty objective truth. Now, there may be a small group of people who would say, oh, good, I fucking can't stand cats, right? So I do believe there is a bit of an objective. There's not a bit. I think there's a pretty objective truth.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when we really drill down, we know what that is.
That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't matter who's got the facts, who knows more, who can beat the conversation. Oh, no, that's not true. Hitler didn't do that. Hitler did this. You know what I mean?
Right. So now you're getting into the whole idea of historical representation.
Yeah, because everyone thinks like, you know, that's an argument point, right? It's like, well, actually, you know, I mean, like some things just because Hitler just came out of my head out of nowhere. But for example, he was Jewish and he wasn't Aryan, white,
That's
blue
right.
eyes, you know.
That's right.
blonde.
Schicklgruber.
So I mean,
that's the family line that he came through. It's the Schicklgruber line.
right.
Yeah.
So then, well, actually, thank you for. Didn't remember the name, but thank you. But so my point is, yet people followed him. People did atrocities over a guy. It's like I'm like the first question in my mind would be like, wait a minute, you want this? And look at you. Wait, like everyone should have just stepped, but the propaganda, like I think relates to today, which I think they were testing it back then. And I remember the nuns when they taught us about that part of history with the Holocaust, the whole thing. I remember they were saying, you know, this is a lesson for us that to never do this again. Meaning we didn't know it was in our nature. Then we find out it's in our nature. Yeah, I'm thinking to myself, but come on now. There was a Spanish Inquisition. There was all kinds of, obviously, I'm not comparing it to the Holocaust. I think that's the worst. I can't even, I went to Auschwitz and I couldn't even walk inside. The energy I felt there, it was just, I couldn't do it. Sorry, I digress. My point with the whole, say Hitler, for example, and the Holocaust is the propaganda installed, which I knew that it says a lot about humanity. And so when people would ask me in the past, 20, 30 years, when that topic comes in, I go, what makes you think you're that much different? You know what I mean? We think that we're not. And then here comes 2020 and the mask and this. And even my friends were like, are you getting jabbed? I'm like, never. Nobody's touching me. First of all, I'm allergic to pretty much everything. I don't get verklempt for no reason. You can call it hypersensitive, whatever it is. I'm full of fire. I'm hyper by nature, whatever. But I can't even take ibuprofen. I used to be able to take it for, not to get too descriptive, but for my monthly pains. And I became allergic to it. And for the most part, I'm sensitive to a lot of things. So I'm like, you're not touching me just for the fact that I don't know. Second of all, I think I did my research. Third of all, I don't trust government workers. Like there's so many reasons that I'm going, no. And then that was just one aspect, but the greater one is freedom for me. I mean, I was locked up. I mean, my whole life, it's been a struggle of being free. And so then I come here, my dad was in the Navy, so I was already an American by birth because he was in the Navy when I was born in Naples. And regardless, my family, they had restaurants, they had hotels, they forced me to work. They wouldn't pay me. They wouldn't let me go out. I had no life. So for me, it's ultimately my fight and my belief kind of tied in with the objective reality or belief that you're talking about is that. Like, I don't even care if you think I'm right or wrong. It's how I feel. And I feel that I was born free. Like zoos. Like, why do we still have zoos? Why is it okay to lock up animals? Even when we say we're preserving them or we're giving them a good environment, we're taking care of them. I'm just saying. All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole zoo thing, I think comes out of the rush of these World's Fairs that happened in the 1900s. And I don't really think zoos existed like that prior to then. And when you look at these ideas of Tartaria and these World's Fairs, it almost seems as they existed to give people who had no cultural foundation, no idea of really who they were or what they were, to bring them into these environments and to get them up to speed as quickly as possible, right? Like the World's Fairs, and they're all over the place. There are literally thousands of them around the world. If you go to Wikipedia and type in World's Fairs, like there are World's Fairs that are famous that are talked about, like the Chicago World's Fair or the San Francisco World's Fair or the St. Louis World's Fair. But there are other World's Fairs that are smaller, that are never talked about. Like I was born in France, and before we came to the States, my parents lived in a town called Metz. And even Metz had a World's Fair. So what were these World's Fairs doing? Well, they were getting and sampling cultures from all over the world, whether it was the Aboriginal exposition or the Indonesian exposition. They would have animals. So these World's Fairs were like, we're going to have a group of people that we're introducing to society. Like these people are like blank slates, and we're going to take them to the World's Fairs. And we're going to have these World's Fairs all over the place, and they're going to get a crash course in education and these ideas of history the way that we want to teach history. So the animal stuff, I think, was a part of that. And people have always had some relationship with domesticated animals. And I'm sure that there are much older versions of zoos, if you want to look at the history of zoos.
Yeah.
But they really take place like after the whole World's Fair thing happens. So I can't tell you why they still have zoos, but I believe that's where they grew in popularity, was during that time.
No, true. And I agree. It's just, to me,
but we're in a zoo too, aren't we? Aren't we all in a zoo in some ways?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I'm just so beyond, and have been this way, where it's like when you're an owner of a business or whatever, you're a teacher, you're a leader, right? The buck ends with you, right? So at the end of the day, why are we wasting all this time pointing the fingers? Like, say, like Ben Shapiro with a Ye situation. It's like, and just everyone's like, oh, this is wrong, and pointing the finger. It's like, or I'm better, or like the Green Movement, supposedly, right? It's like those.
Well, I think there are people that have grievances, and I think some of those grievances are legit. They're legit. Like if I was a millennial, and a lot of millennials don't dig the baby boomers. But if I was a millennial and I had to borrow all this money in order to go to college, it put me in serious debt so that I couldn't really be on a competitive scale or level unless I got into medicine or computer sciences or law, so they could start making big bank early on and then pay off my debt, right? I would have a grievance with the baby boomers. I would definitely have a grievance with the system.
Right. Yes.
Now that doesn't mean that you could use that as a cudgel or your cross. You can have a grievance and you can do something about it.
Right.
Which I think is maybe what you're talking about, right? The buck does stop with us. I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a choice. I have the choice to consume. I have the choice to pollute. I have a choice. Yeah. Believe it or not. Even if that plant that you're driving by on the highway, you're also in that car. Like, and again, I'm not talking about gas and the carbon tax. Scam. Just in a whole. Like, imagine if we all go back, and I'm not trying to go back in time, or like that we should all go back, to bartering and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, what if the majority of us had to grow our own food, make our own clothes, right? The relationship that we would have with the animals, the earth, how we wouldn't have time for as much gossiping and bullshit and talk. You see what I mean? It's like you'd be exhausted. And if anything, at the end of the day or at the end of the week, or maybe somebody's getting married, and then that's a cause for celebration and taking a break and everybody cooks it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, there's nothing, as much as they want to make us transhuman, the elites, if you want to call it that, WF, whatever organization that talks about it, Harari, you know what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, it's like, if I don't consume, what can they do? If we don't consume.
Right. Yeah. Well, I used to talk about this a long time ago on my podcast back in the 2010s. And I said, if you want to change the world, do nothing.
Right. I love that.
I mean, really all we needed was about 15% of the population to stay home for about 30 days. Would have changed the entire game.
Wow, that's impressive. I didn't think about that. Like, you even had a number.
Yeah. Well, all it would take would be 15%. You just stay home for 30 days and they would come running to your door. But first, there'd be all these threats. And then people would just, hey, we're going to get together. We're going to barbecue. We're going to get to know our neighbors. Kind of like how COVID was, although on our terms, not theirs. Right.
Right. I love it. That's beautiful. Yes.
But we can't do that now, though. That option's off the table.
No, you're right.
Because they want us to do that now. They want us to do that now. Right?
Yeah.
They want us to just not buy anything. Right? Isn't that the program? You'll have
no. You're right, because
right.
the resources are finite anyway, right? There's not enough.
I don't know. Well, I have other ideas.
I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about food. I'm not talking about the earth. I'm talking about where are we getting all the metals to build the cars?
But there's a lot of different things we could do. I mean,
that's true. We have the technology. You're right.
There are, I guarantee you, and we've had a plateau on the technological front for quite a while. Like the last thing that they gave us was this, right?
Right.
That's it, right here. So we haven't really moved past the cell phone. I guarantee you, whatever we're seeing out here, and because there's been and this was 2000, smartphone was 2007, right?
Yeah. So
we're 15 years.
Well, not the smartphone, but the iPhone, because I had a BlackBerry back then.
Right. So the iPhone, let's call it the iPhone, 2007.
Yeah.
We're 15 years now in this holding pattern technologically. So the scale was almost always that the private sector, the military industrial complex, the black budget stuff, the R&D stuff was always 50 years ahead. Whatever we had, they were 50 years ahead. And since we've been in a holding pattern since 2007, you could probably double that. They're probably 100 years ahead now. So we're talking about things like complex polymers and all these different compounds that they're investing in their stealth, fly-by-night, one wing, glider, UFO tech. I mean, all that stuff is real. Mm. And so they're using the things that we could be using in our everyday life in a way that would make our lives way more economical, way more efficient. There was this guy, his name is Ben Rich, and he was the head of Skunk Works for Lockheed. So the Skunk Works teams are the teams that they just get the best guys, who are women or whatever. They get the best, and they say, we're going to get the best metallurgist. We're going to get the best software designer. We're going to get all these people, and we're going to have an elite team, and we're going to R&D like crazy. So this guy, Ben Rich, was the head of Skunk Works for Lockheed for a number of years. And on his deathbed, he said, not only are there stars, but we've been there. And there is free energy, but it would take an act of God to get it released to the public.
Right.
So the whole idea that we would run out of resources is based on a model of the world that we think
are living in right now.
Right.
Gotcha. 100%. Well
So
said.
So I just wanted to jump in because
no, I'm glad you did. Yeah.
There's some assumptions I think sometimes that we really need to take a hard look at.
Well, for example, when they say gratitude is powerful, but then they became, like you said, with the new age, they to me, they missed the boat, or they turned it into this whole, you can't drink, you can't smoke. All these things are then you're more enlightened and all this stuff, right? I'm going, for example, like when I was doing my hair for the show, I rarely blow dry my hair because I just go all natural. But I have a blow dryer. In fact, it was gifted to me, something I would not typically give myself because it's not a need, right? So it's been years now that I live more on a need. What do I need? What does my soul need? My body, what do I need? And how can I help? And how can I give back? Because it literally makes me feel good. I just like that feeling. I don't feel good when I upset somebody. I feel good when they feel good, period. But the hairdryer moment today, this is just an example. Like I have 20,000 moments a day, every day, just like this, where I never take it for granted. When I'm blowing my hair, I'm literally thinking about Ukraine, Russia, the migrants, and how we don't even flinch. A lot of us, that moment with that hairdryer, that we just take like it's part of what do you mean not? Of course I have a hairdryer. You get what I'm saying? And so every time I'm dealing with, when I train people, when I'm coaching, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, I always got to bring them back to, okay, what's important here? Right. What's really important? What do you want? Everybody wants power, right? Everybody wants a sense of security. I go, but you, at the end of the day, you really do want to love and be loved. Am I correct? And every time, whether I'm in a room full of 300 people or a conference room with 10, they all say yes. I said, well, how do you think that happens? In a me movement, me, like it's all about me or narcissistic or not being grateful, meaning not being present, not being aware. That's why I go so full tard to, can we just all go like maybe, let me put it this way. If I was in charge, I would make sure that every teenager either goes to a communist country for 6 months or their choice or both, live on a farm for 6 months and figure it out. I know that it would help change what I'm seeing because people are more medicated than ever. And I mean like Zoloft, like the mental health. And yeah, we can blame the government. We can blame, not blame, but yes, these are facts. The PSYOP, yes. But my whole thing is like when people act like there's no way out, and I feel that there is. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, so you brought up a lot there.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, it's okay. I can handle it. I don't know if all people want power.
All people want what?
I don't think all people want power. I'm not sure about that.
Well, people want control or they want some sense of security.
Control is different than power.
Yes.
And I do think people want control.
Thank you.
And I do believe people are very invested in security. Very much, right? So security and control, which are really like,
they're kind of delusions.
They're first chakra kind of needs, right?
Yeah.
It's like just like control your environment and control everything. And if you control everything, then you don't have to deal with chaos. You don't have to deal with whatever. And I agree with you about the youth. I mean, I would go even further because they're already living in a communist country pretty much now. But I would go even further and say you get 2 years of service, mandatory service when you graduate from high school. 1 year. Now you're going to have to revamp the military to do this.
Right.
But 1 year would be military. And then the other year would be like a farm or something where you're pitching in.
Yes.
Right. And then on weekends, once a month, you'd go back with your military, ROTC kind of model. And then after that, for those 2 years, you can apply those 2 years to a college, or you could do a 2-year like certification,
like
something.
A credit.
Yeah, it's all paid for, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can even go one step further, and you could go one step further. This was an idea that Robert Heinlein put forth in Starship Troopers, which is the only people that had the ability to vote were people that had served. So there was a difference between being a citizen and a private citizen. If you're a private citizen, you could enjoy all the things that society has to offer, but you had no voice in how society was run. If you were a citizen, that means that you had served and that you could vote and you could participate in that decision-making process. So if you did that, right, for those 2 years, not only would you get 2 years worth of credit, and you'd learn about things. You'd learn about the country. You'd learn about how to defend yourself and how to care for other things and other people. But on the back end of that, you would vote. You'd be able to vote. If you didn't do the 2 years, you wouldn't be able to.
Right.
Because at that point, you would be informed. You would be informed about the issues versus spending all of this money that you don't have to get reprogrammed in a university, come out the other side and hate the country. So I agree with you. I think that would be a great thing. But we have these are really huge mountains now in our society and our culture, which save the introduction of a third party that shocks the hell out of everybody, or a natural disaster and calamity. Short of those two things, changing the system theoretically is almost impossible. I mean, I think it could happen, but it would have to be immediate, and it would take maybe 15 to 20 years if the internet
that's what they
was
usually
right.
say, right? It takes about 20 years.
It's about 20. It's about generations. So about 30.
Yeah.
I think 30 years is a generation. You could cut that time in half if you use the internet and kind of the more mass media tools that we have now to get people up to speed. But I do have a lot of faith in some of the youth who you won't read it on TV, or you won't see it on TV, or you won't read about it. But a lot of these Gen Z kids are really based, and they know what's going on. They're very different than the millennials, and there are some really good millennials.
I agree. I feel,
who have really gone through the fire, and which is what they're supposed to do with Pluto. But the Gen Z kids they're born based. I'm going to be on a show tonight with this 23-year-old kid out of Florida who's really switched on and totally
Dr.
based.
Narco Longo?
Yeah.
Wait, I thought that was your son.
No, he's my astrological son.
Oh my God, because I heard you mention him yesterday. I'm like, wait a minute, because he was on somebody else's show. I liked him and started following him. And then I go, what? I just found this guy now. And now you're on his, and I thought he was your son. I was like, I'm looking him up. I'm looking at the picture going, dude, they don't look alike.
No. But it's really weird because his father was a Virgo, which is what I am, and his father died. So it's like, there's a weird thing going on. He was on my show a couple months ago. We had a great time. And I just found his channel on YouTube because it was part of my Tartarian feed. He started to do a lot of Tartarian stuff. And I'm like, I really like this show. I like what this guy's doing. And then he showed up in my chat one day and said, hey, can I be on your show? I'd already given it some thought about having him on my show. I'm like, yeah, come on my show. So we had a great time, and I'll be on with him tonight on his show.
That's
and he's
awesome.
a Gen Z guy. He's a Gen Z guy.
I know. Oh my God, you're looking at the same chat. I was just looking at that. I'm like, Chucky, I'm ashamed to say I'm Gen X. Is that the one? Oh, wait.
Gen X is great.
That's what I'm saying. What are you talking about?
Love Gen X.
Hey, MM. Welcome. Wait, did you just join us, or you've been in the chat? I've been totally, you guys know me anyway, right? I go off, and Robert, he's way over me. Hello, Olga in chat. Peace emoji. Popping in to say hi and hitting the like button. Thank you. Much love. We'll have to watch what I miss later. Yes, and make sure to leave me a comment on the description. You can also tag Robert. I also tagged him in the description, guys. And then later on, I'll be putting his links in the description below to his website and his podcast. I mean, there's a lot, and you're going to love all of it. But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't finish reading. Interesting guest and info. Thanks, Olga. And Robert, exclamation, star swoosh, and prayer hands emoji. You know I love emojis. And thank you, for the super chat. Thank you so much. Bless you.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Very cool. I'm going to say I think it's my first super chat. No, somebody else gave me a super chat. I think it was Monday. What's today, Wednesday? I'm already losing track. But still, it's still the first you gave me, MM. And that was a very generous super chat. Thank you.
That was a nice super chat.
Right?
Yeah.
Robert, you're good luck charm. You know, I love my Virgos. I told you that on the phone the other day real quick. By the way, guys, Robert and I didn't talk much. I did email him. He's been on my list. I actually think I did reach out to you in one of your chats. asking you to talk to you or something. And then I go, oh, God, maybe that's why he ignored you. Cause you would like say some people's names as you're reading the chat. And
Right.
I'm like, wait, I'm like, I love you, Robert. And you're like, you didn't skip me. You just do what I do. Like we try to answer to everybody or say hi.
Right.
But now you're telling me that's how this guy got your attention. I don't know. I think I probably even removed it now that I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking maybe that made him.
So usually when stuff like that happens, my mods will alert me. Somebody said something about being on your show. And then my girlfriend watches the chat like a hawk, and she would have told me. So.
Oh, that's awesome. What's her name?
Joan.
Joan. Just trying to think if I've seen it. I don't usually watch the super chat because sometimes I listen to you and I don't even watch you. I just put the phone and I just listen to you. It just depends on how busy I am or how tired I am.
Yeah.
But that's how much I love you. That of course I like watching you because you share a lot of stuff on the screen.
Right.
And so typically I'm like, what did he say again? Wait. He just pulled something up and I go running to my phone. I'm like, what was it? I did it. You're the best. You're awesome. Thank you. I don't know did anybody have any questions or any comments for Robert if I missed it? See, the super chats help because the color pops up and I can easily spot it. But
more super chats. Come on. It's Christmas time.
Hey.
Show Olga a little bit of love.
Did you see I posted on Instagram that you were coming on and the song that I chose was Feliz Navidad? Or the way Feliciano says is Feliz Navidad. What's weird is that the other day I was singing it and you that was one of your intros to one of your podcasts. And I'm like, I can't. Like the connection or, I believe in synastry. Synastry? No.
Synchronicity.
Well, yeah. But I was really thinking like serendipity.
Serendipity, right. Kismet. That's what they used to call it, kismet.
Eso. But
before
so what do you
I
guys
forget,
think about Robert? I
forget though, really quickly, I wanted to bring this up because it bounced back in my head.
Yes, it's like my little monkey thing. Go ahead.
So I've never really thought about this until you brought it up, and I'd have to really drill down on the etymology. But Zeus sounds a lot like Zeus. And what did Zeus do? Zeus looked down on humanity like they were animals, right? Like humanity, like so Earth. So anyway, it was just a little connection there, and I'll follow that little rabbit hole. Zeus and Zeus. So there you go.
I love it. Well, I don't want to take more of your time, of course. I don't know do you see the chats? Does anything jump at you?
I don't see any chat.
Oh, you don't see the chats at all?
No.
Oh.
Let me see. How can I do a?
You should be able to.
Hold on. Oh, comments. I got it on the private chat. Let's see what we have here. Gen X and Capricorn. Gen X here to I'm broke ass poor. Sorry. All I have to offer is me.
Your love. You're here.
Okay. Well, there you go. My opinion is valuable, sort of. I think Gregory's got to work on his confidence level there a little bit.
Hey, Gregory. Well, he's got to have some confidence because I'm tough. Right, Gregory?
Well, you're Leo. You're like the sun, right? So you'll radiate like strength and character, and so people will be attracted to you for that. But
a lot of people can't handle me. That's the truth. And that's the other thing I've gotten, especially when I was younger, then I just, you get to a stage, or I think I do, or I did, before, everyone's like telling me what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. I mean, I'm sure it happens with everyone, but for me specifically, because I'm naturally loud, I can't help but to say what I really think. And then these are terms that I remember learning when I moved to the US, where people are like, oh, don't sugarcoat it or anything. And I'm like, what does that mean? I had to figure that out. And then once I figured that out, then I started sugarcoating things. And then it was so much work. And then I'm getting frustrated. And then people weren't happy anyway. I'm like, see, you're not happy either way. You want me to be the way you want me to be, but then if I do what you want me to do, then I'm not the girl you like. Right. Either you can't stand me or you can.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, really, there is some degree of taking the temperature, because if you're a complete asshole, then people will let you know, and maybe you should listen to that, right? But if you're really just living your life in a way that is authentic as it can be, um, while also kind of anchoring it in some moral ground, whatever that moral ground is for you, then ultimately you shouldn't really care about what other people think in terms of what you do for a living or how you live your life. It's your life, right? And if you're fucking up, life will provide you a course correction at some point.
Oh,
And it'll be your hubris if you don't see it. And then
my
you
dad
have to
used to
deal
call
with
it. How's that humble pie?
yeah.
How's that humble pie tasting?
Yeah.
Not for me. I don't. He didn't tell me that personally, but I remember hearing him say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have. What time is your other show today?
I think it's,
You're a
I
guest
think
on.
yeah. So he tapes his show, so it'll be at 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay. So it's not live.
I don't think it's a live. No, I think he edits it and puts it up in 24 hours. So we'll talk a lot about astrology. We'll talk about Sagittarius since he's a Sagittarius. And I'm just kind of going through some things in my head today about what we're going to talk about. But you're great. I think you just keep going on your path. You'll be a smashing success.
Thank you for the shout out on your podcast.
Yeah, of course. We'll put a link up here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm telling you, I feel like you're a gift to humanity and to me. And I'm not going to get too sappy because I'm already tearing up. Bless you.
No, thanks.
Right. And,
thanks.
I hope to talk to you soon. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah. I'll be back on. You have me on anytime you want. If I'm available, I'll do it. But this is the other side of where we are right now. Like you and I are connecting. And I'm connecting with people in your chat, and people in your chat are connecting with me, and they're connecting with you. People on my show will connect with you. And this is going on all over the place, right? We're having an omnidimensional experience. And I think that part is real. And I think that part has a lot to do with where we're headed. We have to sort out some of the individual issues because here in the West, we've been so inculcated into, well, I'm an individual and I'm so important and my opinion counts, right? Well, all those things are true to a large extent. Mm-hmm. But what we don't understand is how to work well together in groups and teams. I mean, you can even see this with the left and right dichotomy. Mm-hmm. Like on the right, like I go to these meetings here in Texas, like with the Tea Party, and what you have is you've got a bunch of individuals. That's what makes them who they are. And they believe in things like personal freedom and truth and accountability and responsibility and God and the Constitution, but it all starts and ends with them. Then you go over to the left, and what you have with the left is you have a number of people who don't have that belief or don't have that faith in themselves. And so what do? They come together in groups because now inside the group provides them with an identity. It provides them with a purpose and a focus and organization. And that's why the left has been so successful. Yeah. Is because they take advantage of groups of people who put their personal identity off to the side. And it's usually, and I don't need to offend anybody who's on the left or was on the left, but mostly they're damaged goods. And they're damaged goods because in a lot of ways they're very sensitive.
Right.
And they see what's going on in the world, and they're very quick to try to find what are those two things that we talked about earlier, control and security. And so they come into this group setting, this group identity, and they share common values, common cause, and they're really good at organizing because people are willing to sublimate their identity in order for the betterment or the good of the group. This is why the left has been so successful.
Right.
And on the right, you got a bunch of individuals. Well, shit, I don't have to do that. You know?
I'm not on the right. That's the thing. I'm not on. People assume. They're always like, even my own interns are like, oh, I didn't know you were like a Trumpster. I'm like, when have you ever seen me talk about Trump? Unless it's like part of the news or something like that, right? Like something that happened and they're like, I'm like, I come off like that. They're like, Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure, but then I've been watching your podcast on YouTube, and you sound like you're in the right. I'm like, listen, I'm such an individual that to call me a Karen, because I've been called that too. I've been called a Trumpster. I'm like, I can see the correlation. I can see why they're putting those things together and thinking I'm for the right. I'm like, is it my fault that being free, wanting freedom, is to the right? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you guys, the so-called left or whatever the other group is, I don't care. So I don't care what you call it. If it could be like two teams, right? Like two basketball teams or two football games, or like I just had a vision of when I was in the convent, right? The two groups, whatever the group is. But at the end of the day, it's like you still want the same thing I want. Twitter's proof of that. I want you to be silenced, but not me.
Mhm. Right.
So it's like, I mean, I want what you want. You want what I want. You want to be heard. You want me to respect your opinions and your feelings and your beliefs, but you can't do both. Well, there's obviously going to be tension because I'm definitely not groupthink. So, and
Yeah.
usually what happens with me is that there'll be a whole room. In fact, I used to spend every holiday, if I didn't go to Spain, because my family lives there, I would go to this family's house in New Jersey. And I've been doing it basically ever since I came to the US in 94, 95. And it's been awesome. I've been very grateful. It's like having a second family here, and they're from Spain. Their kids grew up here, but they speak fluent Spanish. So it's like, seriously, like my other family. And just this past, during this whole COVID thing, which I knew through astrology that it was going to happen, not maybe necessarily with that family, but I knew it was going to happen in my sphere, in my existence of people that, even if you've known them for 20, 30 years, family members, you name it, I knew that it was coming. And I kept telling everybody, whenever they would have an issue or they would get sensitive about A or B, whatever, this is prior to 2020, I would say, guys, I'm telling you, shit's going to hit the fan in 2020. I'm telling you right now. And it's going to get to the point where you're going to have to decide, or I'm going to have to decide. So please, let's not make this happen. Like I kept saying, I kept warning them, don't let politics, don't let anything get in between us. I love you and I don't want to lose you. Lo and behold, what do they want to call it? Fate, divine plan, however you want to call it, but it happened. And we still kind of stuck it through. But then just last year for Christmas, and that's 2021, because during 2020, we couldn't get near each other, right? Separation. I was fine with it, but out of respect. As soon as I get there, and they started talking about, what was it? Something about, oh yeah. They were saying at the dinner table, I mean, we already finished eating dinner. We're just chilling, having a good time, singing Spanish, Christmas songs. And they said that Biden was the one that invented and created the jab. And I go, guys, if you were sitting here the whole 2020 going nowhere, watching TV all day, whether it's CNN or whatever you're watching, clearly the whole warp speed, or what was it called again?
Yeah, Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah, Operation Warp Speed. Yeah. I'm like, and they're like, no. I mean, they were blindly screaming at me. And I go, I'm not going to fight with you about this. And they're like, you know what? Anything that's better than Trump. And then the hate that came through them. And these are people that I've known for 25 years that I spent all the holidays with. And I grew up with their kids grew up with me. And I'm just like, everything that was coming. But to really be in it, to see it and to feel it, I mean, I haven't gone back. I still talk to them, but I won't put myself in that environment. Not because we disagree. It's because the hate, the venom they were spewing at me, just because I said, I'm like, guys, Google it. Like, we were not talking politics. I was not taking sides. And yet, so it's so real, this, like the group think that you're saying. It's so, and they were saying because they consider themselves blue collar, meaning workers. He used to be in the Air Force, and she used to be a nurse. Anyway, they're retired now. And we've always been very different because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Although my father was in the Navy, my mother was also a teacher before they got married. But then after my dad retired, then they opened businesses and lived and stayed and retired in Spain. So I have both in me. You know what I mean? And so that's the other reason I'm like, what is this? how do you, I mean, I already know the answer. I'm not, let me just, I'm not trying to ask the question, but it had to do with the group think. That was a trigger for me when you said that about the group think and how
Yeah.
they want to identify. And go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so we have Pluto moving into Aquarius, which some people believe is the beginning of the Aquarian age. And I think that there's some truth to that, although we've been in a kind of a slow creep for a while now. If you look at the group that I was talking about who believes that they're individuals and why do they need this shit, what they need to do is learn more about how to work together. They need to learn how to work together.
MFG.
And then when you,
do you see that? Do you see that
it's
on the
not
screen?
about being left or right. It's about being good and not evil. I think there's some truth to that. I mean, the good and evil. I don't want to go on a philosophical tangent around
Right, we'll
what's
be here
good and what's
forever.
evil. Right, but I understand the spirit of the comment, and I think the left-right dichotomy is a trap.
It totally.
But if you look,
that's my point. Thank you.
But if you look at who occupies those camps, they are types. And so on the right, you have the individuals who just want to be left alone.
That's
honestly, right. They just want to be left alone. I don't need a group. I don't need to go to a meeting. I just want to live my life. I want to do my work. I want to pay my taxes. If I have extra money, I want to buy a boat and hang out in the boat on the weekends and drink some Budweiser and have some kids and watch football on Sunday. That's a little thumbnail, right? And then on the left, you have, but they're individuals that just want to be left alone. And then on the left, you have people that don't want the individuals to be left alone. There's problems. We got problems, right? Problems. And guess what? Depending on your skin tone or your income tax bracket, you're part of the problem.
Right.
So on the left, they know how to organize and they know how to have a group experience, but they're lousy at being individuals.
Absolutely.
So what we have to do is somehow get the left to take on more accountability and responsibility for being individuals and not pointing the finger at whoever the bad guy is, whether it's Trump or Elon Musk or somebody that looks like me, right? So that they need to be able to take more responsibility. On the right, they need to look at the group thing a bit more. And they need to look around and say, you know what? If I buy this piece of shit from Walmart, I'm actually participating in globalism. Right. And I'm taking future jobs away from my children.
Right.
Right. They need to. So the idea for the right is to have a bit of a more global perspective. And that gets back to when you, by the way, I really think that you should start a program where they hand out hair dryers at the border. Yeah.
Wait, wasn't that in your bio? Your humor, your sarcasm?
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. What can we call it? Like blow dryers for bohos or something like that, right? Or hair dryers for fill in the blank. That should be your thing. You get Ocasio-Cortez.
Then I gotta get generators. You gotta get generators. This is where we're gonna plug them in.
Right. Well, they're. I guarantee you, those people on the border are gonna have places to go. They'll have wall sockets. They're not going to wind up at a tent city. But if you gave them hair dryers, you'd feel less guilty about using your hair dryer every morning.
No, I don't feel guilty. I'm just saying that everything we have, right? Turning on the light switch.
Right. It's a given. Little things we take for granted.
Exactly. Like there's nothing I ever. So in some ways you can become too complacent because I haven't, I like anyone, at least I want to be better every day. Right. So I want to do better, just whatever I'm doing, right? But at the same time, I can be like a nun and have very little, and I do, and I'm fine with it. Like, I don't have any issues. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to wear this expensive bag to feel, you know what I'm saying, to feel more valued. I do quite the opposite, and I might not look at it because again, anybody, well, not anybody, but now with YouTube videos, anybody can like get a makeup tutorial and figure out how to look a certain way when you don't even look even close to what you really look like without the mask or the costume. So, but to me, it's all play. Like some days, I wear jeans and a t-shirt and, a cowboy hat or something. You know what I mean? Like I like changing it because I do think life is a dress rehearsal in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I have fun with it, but I don't
Have fun, yeah.
identify with it. It's
Have
like a little
fun. Have
kid, or
fun.
like,
Yeah.
changing the clothes on your Barbie. If not that I was one of those girls, because I was a tomboy, but I'm just saying that to play with life is one
Yeah.
thing. To be consumed by it, to identify with it, to need acceptance for it, to feel you're better. Because come on, what do they call it? They call it shopping therapy. But like
Yeah.
you said, here are people going to, say, the Walmart or whatever, and they're shopping. The group that we're talking about.
Right. But I mean, and to be fair, because I do shop at Walmart occasionally. Number one, it's a regional decision and choice because there's nothing else here. But also number two, it's an economic choice. Because if they wanted to have a different experience, they could go to San Antonio, because I live in Texas. They could go to San Antonio and go to the mall in San Antonio. They'd have to be able to afford gas to go to San Antonio, right? And then afford to shop. So again, a lot of that was also an economically based choice. But it's, at some point, the buck has got to stop somewhere. So I think that's where we are. I mean, the so-called right needs to learn how to work better together with other people and groups. And you could even look at the elements in our so-called culture which are forcing them to do that. I've watched it here. I've watched these people get the wake-up call, whether it's down at the city council, or whether it's down at the elementary school with the school board or whatever, right? People on that side have finally gotten the wake-up call, and they're learning how to organize. They're learning how to pull together. Right. You've got parents that have pulled their kids out of public school and are homeschooling them with other parents, which is a group experience. So that's happening, right? That is taking place because people are being forced to do that because they can't operate in a vacuum and have any power, really. And then on the left side, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what's forcing them to become more individual and to stand on their own 2 feet more. I don't really see that, at least not right now. And maybe that'll be the case 2 years from now or 3 years from now. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I used to be a teacher as well. And I mean, I still teach in other ways now, but taking away age, just the basics when you're raising a child. Like, for example, do you have siblings, Robert?
No.
I think you might have said that you didn't in one of your podcasts, but anyway. So when I was growing up, I'm one of 6. I'm the 4th of 6. But it was very common that your parents didn't cook everybody a special meal. It was like you sat down and you ate. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should force the kid to, because I have a friend, she's Greek, she's 65 or something. So we're a little bit different in generation, but her mother used to make her, pour down pasta down her throat. And for her, pasta was just awful. Like she just sat there for hours. She just couldn't swallow it. To this day, she loves bread, but like pasta or rice, I think it's now a texture thing, but whatever it's related to the forcing. So I'm not saying we should force it where it's traumatizing, but at the same time, my mom didn't have time or the money at certain points, like when my dad was in the service, to do any of that stuff. It's like you're going to sit down, we're having lentils, and you're eating it. And when you're hungry enough, you ate it, even if it was 2 bites. You know what I'm saying? Where now, when I was a teacher in the 90s, especially for elementary education and daycares, it was already happening then where the kids were going home, mostly. They would come back. Oh, what'd you eat for dinner last night? Hot dog. The next day, what'd you eat for dinner? Hot dog. What'd you eat for dinner? Pizza. You know what I mean? Like all these little things were already changing. And actually that's what made me get out of the industry, because I felt like I'm teaching them how to garden. Like I would do things that weren't even part of our syllabus at the schools. The kids would learn about reading, writing, just how to get along with each other, just basic human things. And then they just go home and they would forget it. There would be no reinforcement at home, and the parents are too busy. They were professionals. They were, lawyers, doctors. And I was just like, oh God, the future does not look good. Not that it was much better in my generation or that there wasn't discrepancies in all generations. But then I was like, oh man. And then the cell phone comes out, the computers come out the way they did, right? Remember the gateway computers and the...
Well, so there's a distinct difference between computers and cell phones. Because when you had a computer and you had to go online and do certain things, it took work. I mean, you had to really know where to go. You had to root around. You had to keep bookmarks. The early days of YouTube, if you wanted to upload a video, it was not easy, right? And then the cell phone comes along, and then it changes the game in a really big way. Really big way. And it puts the hands of a major computer into everybody around the planet. I mean, you could probably equate the cell phone and the smartphone more than the cell phone with the Gutenberg press, right? And whatever, it's got the same impact. So now you have people who are in third world countries who are seeing things in the West that they've never seen before.
Right.
That was one of the big issues with China in this last wave of protests that they had, because they're seeing all these people around the world who don't have COVID. And they're at the World Cup and they're doing all these things. These young people are losing their minds. It's like, why is this happening there? And 3 years in, we're still having to do these tests at a moment's notice, right? So just like anything, there's a positive side and a negative side to it. But yeah, I think if we could round off these edges.
Yeah, but for me, when you were talking about how, in this case, the left, where they know how to organize, group up, all that.
Yeah.
I don't know if, again, am I going too far ahead or I'm going too back? One of the, I am extreme with that Libra that always at constant balance, but it's the fact that parenting has changed, and parenting is, I don't know if I'm going to be hyperbolic by saying a word like futile, but to me, the parenting, if you have strong parents or responsible parents or parents that take accountability or force their kids to take accountability instead of, oh, no kid left behind, and everybody gets a prize. I know everybody's been talking about this, but I've definitely been a teacher. I helped raise my younger brother and sister. Like, I'm not an expert. Of course not. I only know I know nothing. I can tell you that. That's why I stay humble. But at the end of the day, you still have to be like, you have to parent. You have to pick up your shit. Like, I just saw it this weekend. Dear friend of mine, love them. Great. Treated me like royalty. Not complaining. I'm just observing as I can. Critiquing, not judging, critiquing. And what is this? As from the moment you're born, especially if you're being breastfed, but either way, the bottle's in your mouth. The ego's being fulfilled from the second you're coming out of the womb. If, having a decent parent anyway, right? Not ending up an orphan and being neglected. Let's just say the norm would be that, right? And then you just get everything you want. You just go, wah. And then you grew up with other people and yeah, I'm the victim. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, I think parenting should help foster a sense of independence. And that's not what it's done. If anything, it's fostered a sense of dependence because the parents themselves have issues. Right. The parents themselves have things that they haven't worked out. And so what they do is they foster a sense of dependence versus independence. It's kind of like, what do they call it? It's not a Stockholm syndrome, but it's the one where it's like, where you poison your kid from that, like that movie with Bruce Willis, I See Dead People, right? Where she was poisoning her kid to the point where the kid was always sick. So the kid would always depend on her. Right? There's a term for it. I'm blanking out on it. But that's what parents.
I know what you're saying too, and I can't think of it.
But that's what parents have done.
I'm gonna look at the chat. Maybe somebody in the chat.
They have fostered a sense of dependence on their children because their issues around dependence and independence are deeply unresolved.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with getting right back to the start of our conversation, control and security. So they want to put, they want to put baby bumpers on everything for their
That's what I
kids.
mean.
Yeah. And
That's exactly where I'm getting at.
Yeah, I grew up in the 60s and I was a big latchkey kid. Like my parents wouldn't get home until 5:30 at night. So I was like a 9-year-old kid, kind of running my life, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 to 5:30 or 6. And in the summertime, it was just me. Like I watched myself the entire summer when I was 9 years old. There was nobody there. It was just me. So, I mean, some people might say that, like my parents probably could have gone to CPS because of that now. Like that's how different the world is. But those experiences shaped my life and they shaped my worldview. And I don't blame my parents for that. I had a good time. I learned how to do things in a lot of ways. So I think a lot of it just depends on a particular generation and their issues around dependence and independence. And then we get into then we get into things like the schooling and the basically
indoctrination.
the indoctrination and the mind control that takes
That's
place.
not schooling, right?
Right. I mean, that's really that's a big thing. That is a thing.
Mm-hmm,
And that's been going on for a while now. And the tide really started to change in the 90s. In the 90s, America began to move into a very dark place in the 90s on a lot of different levels, which we could talk about probably on some other show. But to your point, I think people need to be able to foster more of a sense of independence in their children and less dependence on the system.
But they don't. A lot of the comments that I get, or just discussions, is that they just don't know how to begin. Like my own interns, when they come to me with issues, not work related, about their life. For example, the dating, right? What young person, right, especially in their 20s, they're dating or they're looking for the one, right? And they all like either go to social media for answers. I mean, back in the day, we'd have magazines and we'd go through the magazines and like Cosmo or whatever, and like how to get a man, how to keep a man, or blah blah blah. And they all want answers. They all want to know, how do I get this person to call me back? And but it's so different than when we were growing up because it's instant. If they don't get that text back right away,
yeah,
it's like they fall apart.
Right.
I'm generalizing, of course. I'm generalizing, but
yeah.
seriously, I can't tell you how many times I yell at them going, "Hey, get it together." They'll start crying because they didn't turn something in on time, and I gave them a week extra time for something that should have taken 10 minutes to do. And I'm going, wait, come on now. Like, you're wasting my time. You're hindering my life because what did you do? And they just start crying, for example. And I'm going, why are you crying? And they're like, well, because I tried my best. What's funny is that so many of them give me the same answer. Back in the day, I guess it would be like, oh, the dog ate my homework or something. But now the answer is, you hurt me, and now I'm paralyzed. I can't handle responsibility. It's like, you're in your 20s. You're a graduate. What do you have, a master's? What?
Isn't that what Sam Bankman said? Oh, I did my best.
You see that?
Yeah, I just got distracted. I'm sorry. I promise I'll make it up.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And talking about him, I'm so glad you mentioned him real quick, because do you think there's going to be an Epstein here? Because I don't. But people are talking about that.
Well, they extracted him. They're
using him.
They extracted him. Like, he was on a bunch of talk shows. He was on a bunch of like online chats, and there was this one guy, CoffeeZilla, who was basically stalking him. And the third online chat he got into, he nailed him. He nailed him on the terms and conditions. And all of a sudden, Sam wasn't just some hapless, altruistic, capitalistic wonk. He knew he hit a nerve, and he exposed that Sam knew exactly what was going on. So when that happened, you timed that up, and that was just last week. You timed that up with this thing with Maxine Waters in Congress. They did not want him talking to anybody.
Exactly.
So that's in intelligence parlance. It's called an extraction. You're extracting him from the situation, and they'll put him
before.
Yeah, they'll put him in solitary. I'm actually surprised somebody hasn't killed him by now, because I looked at his astrology and I'm like, this guy's probably got at least 1 or 2 contracts out in his life because of what he did.
It wouldn't be that difficult to find him. I'm not trying to,
Well,
here, but...
so in Barbados, he had police protection. So he was under 24-hour surveillance.
Wasn't it Bahamas?
Bahamas. I'm sorry, Bahamas.
Okay. No.
Yeah,
I'm just...
No, he had police protection the whole time. And it was under the auspices of keeping him under surveillance. It was like, well, this is an ongoing investigation and case. And really, they were providing police protection for it.
Well, where's all the money?
300 million of it is supposedly in a bank in Brazil.
What's that going to cover for all the billions?
That's for him. That's his account. That's his account. And the money, the totals of it keep changing. It's up to $7 billion now.
I didn't know.
$7 billion. So
that stuff doesn't happen by accident.
No, it doesn't. Of course not. And then, of course, there's the relationship with Ukraine that nobody's talking about.
That's why I mentioned it again, because I'm like, should I say it? Yeah, for sure. Or the money that went to the Democrats or something, or funding Democrats. I'm not sure.
They were using FTX to wash money in Ukraine. So let's say, for instance, the United States would loan $2.5 billion to Ukraine. Some of that money would then go back through a Ukrainian bank and into a portal with FTX. And then FTX would then reroute that money to Alameda. And then there were separate accounts. It wasn't just that they had an Alameda account and they had an FTX account. They had multiple accounts. And then through those accounts, whether they were in the Bahamas or in the States, they could then use that money to do certain things, like become the 3rd highest donor in the Democratic Party. I mean, Sam Bankman was the 3rd highest donor, $30 million. Where did he get that money? That's the U.S. taxpayers' money, I guarantee you. And that's the U.S. taxpayers' money that went to Ukraine, came back through their little gateway that they had set up. He talked about the gateway. I'm not making it up. It's real. And then converting it into whatever they wanted to convert it into. They could convert it into FTT, which was their funny money coin, and then they could use FTT to buy Bitcoin. They could take Bitcoin, and they could cash out Bitcoin. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they could do this thing. So, number one, it was a huge money laundering operation, huge, and he knew exactly what was going on. He's not a victim.
No, I don't think he's a victim at all. I'm just saying. I mean, the red flags were there from the get-go. I mean, why would people give a young kid?
I don't know if the red flags were there from the get-go. I mean, if you go back and look at, what was it, business? It's one of these magazines. It's like I have the damn thing on my desktop, or maybe I got rid of it. But he was on the cover of this magazine. And basically, the magazine said, "Is this the next Warren Buffett?" That was in August and September of this year. They're comparing him to Warren Buffett 3 months ago. So were there red flags at the beginning? If anybody really paid attention to the crypto game, maybe. But those red flags would have been hard to spot because he was keeping 2 separate books. So he was taking money out of the FTX ledger sheet and exchange, and he had a little back door in the back end, which made it look like nothing was being taken out. So he was cooking the books. And he was taking that money and moving it into Alameda Research. So if you're just looking at the exchange looks fine. So is that, where's the red flag there? Then you had this guy CZ from Binance, who was into FTT. Actually, they gave him a shit ton of FTT because they wanted to, have him as an ally in the exchange space, maybe do things together. So he's holding all this FTT. They gave, by the way, he didn't have to buy it. And then he finds out that Sam Bankman is starting to go around to members of Congress and have conversations with Gary Gensler to essentially begin a conversation that would outlaw exchanges like Binance, who have two exchanges, one in the US and one in China. So really what Sam Bankman was doing is because he knew that there was so much FTT tokens in the hands of the guy that ran Binance that if he ever sold those tokens, it would ruin FTX. It would ruin the scam. So this guy found out, CZ found out that that's what was going on. And so he decides, well, screw it. I'm going to sell all my FTT tokens. And that started the avalanche. So other people began to see what was happening. That was in November. And Sam Bankman was literally trying to get legislation passed to wipe this guy out. That's what he was doing. And he was taking all that money. He gave Mitch McConnell $1 million. $1 million. He didn't care. Like, it's the Rothschild model. Like, you don't care whose palms they grease because somebody's going to be thankful for it.
Yep.
So that's what was going on. And then it collapsed. That's what happened. I'm first of all, it's easy for me to say he shouldn't have done it, but he shouldn't have done it. But if he was going to do that model, then those conversations that he was having with people in Washington needed to be way more airtight, right? Way more airtight than they were.
Again, another surprise. Yeah. Since when does government do anything good, right, organized?
Well, they can when they want to. See, that's the problem. People think government is completely incompetent. That's a front that they'll put on. If
they're organized.
When they want to get something done, trust me. I mean, just look at 9/11, right? Project for the New American Century. They worked on it 2 years in advance. And the guys that ran that project were running everything that happened after 9/11. We get at least 2 wars, 3 if you count Libya, all these contracts with the military-industrial complex, shit tons of money being made. You can't tell me that that's not organized and competent. It's highly organized and competent. So they can do it when they want to, but in a lot of cases, what they'll do is they'll it's like a little, okey doke, little rope-a-dope, and they'll say, oh, well, look at us. We're just really incompetent. We spend money and it's wasteful. And they take advantage of that too. Right? Oh, we're just a dumb blonde. That's all. Not you, Olga, of course.
Oh, please. Come on. How can somebody be House of the Speaker like Pelosi? I mean, there's just so much. When people are talking about clown world, I just.
So they knew what was going on with. It was like, oh yeah, well, just keep feeding me money, and I'll look the other way. And that's what they were doing. They were just looking the other way.
Yeah. Well, here's what Gregory Paul just chatted. Someone was propping him up and putting him with very wealthy people. Because my thing is, when I've seen him in those meetings, and I guess in the Senate and whatnot, I'm just like, I mean, I would not give my money or that kind of responsibility to a little kid like him. I just wouldn't. That's, to me, is common, normal, basic sense.
Well, he comes from.
Yeah, I looked up his dad.
Yeah, he comes from 2 teachers at Stanford, professors. One of the professors is tied with Gary Gensler. One of his fathers tied with Gary Gensler. Mm-hmm. And his father specializes in what? Corporate law. So through his father, he got some kind of indemnification. But the story.
And wait. Now you're thinking, I know I've been dying to ask you this question actually. So see, why would the father? Because when this story broke and I looked into it myself, my question was that, like, the whole, is he going to get Epsteined, right? Why would a father put his kid in that position? That
Because
kind, knowing who he is.
his father's crooked.
That's what I mean. Like, how crazy is that?
His father's crooked.
How dark is that? Right in the public view. I don't think, by the way, I didn't look at his chart, but my instinctual feeling of Sam, he's not all there. I have a sense that he's not all there.
Well,
or
he's
some
also
La La Land.
he's also kind of a project kid. I mean, there are images of him like doing this really weird dream work stuff back when he was a teen. So he's kind of a project kid. He's probably on the spectrum as well. But there's a kind of an infamous story when he was having a meeting with Sequoia Capital, and Sequoia Capital is a big time hedge fund in the Bay Area.
So the question.
So was his father propping him up?
Yeah.
Father, mother. How about the community? How about the community?
Look at this one. Biden used his son to do dirty deals.
How about the community? The community propped him up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It takes a village. It wasn't one person.
This is the same community that propped up Michael Milken and Ivan Boesky.
Got it. Gregory Paul had mentioned earlier, hey, Olga, we're commenting here. I'm like, I thought mostly looked like they were talking amongst themselves, but of course I'm paying attention to my wonderful guest, Robert, here. So
let me tell you the Sequoia story real fast with Sam.
Yeah.
And then we can begin to pull this thing into the dock. But so he was on this call with Sequoia Capital. And Sequoia wound up lending them, I think, $5 million, or giving them $5 million. And there's this rumor that it was part of a wraparound, which is that they were going to get money back in a way that wasn't on the table, but that's a different discussion. So while he's on this call with Sequoia, somebody figured out that he was actually playing either Halo or Call of Duty or something during this call with Sequoia. Like, these guys are, big time hedge fund capitalists in Silicon Valley. And this is a phone call for $5 million. And Sam Bankman is playing Call of Duty while he's talking to them. Although they in the meeting don't know it. Somebody inside of Sequoia found out that's what was going on. And then they immediately saw that and they said, I fucking love this kid. Give him the money. Right? That was the thing that helped get that deal across the finish line. Somebody at Sequoia thought it was so cool that he was playing as a Call of Duty or Halo during this 5 million. Like, you and I would be sweating, right?
Yeah.
So whatever that person saw in Sam Bankman, whether it was that he was just another nerd or a geek or he didn't care, that was it. That was the green light. So think
like
about
that guy
how
on CNN masturbating on Zoom.
Yeah, kind of like that, right? Although
that's what popped into my head.
Yeah, but this led to $5 million from Sequoia Capital. And so and there were people along the way that propped him up, people like that person. But that was just one of it. I think he had a loan from BlackRock. I mean, all these people know what's going on. They're all in on it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, there were one or two people. They're all in on it. These are crime syndicates. And people don't understand that. Like, all the powerful families, whether they're the Clintons or the Trumps or the Bushes, they're crime syndicate families.
Yep.
That's what they are. And they work together, and sometimes they have turf wars. And so Sam Bankman.
Turf wars, I like that one.
Sam Bankman is a byproduct of another crime syndicate group of people and families. That's what it is. So that's who propped him up. It's part of the culture.
That's why it's got to come down. See what I mean? Like, it's not another president that's going to change anything.
No, not unless the president was a tyrant.
Yeah. And you know, like you said, the other group, the so-called right now, right, needs to, like you said, they're already starting. I've actually, you're right. I have a background where I've been doing events.
Mhm.
I haven't done one this year. In fact, I was going to. It's been busy. But so I have these events called the Charge Station, and it was about uniting people to because unity is strength. And I had started it like in 2015. But now I've been more focused on going to like the city hall, the council, and using my voice that way versus just bringing people together and creating strong communities of, you know, of empowerment, of just, you know, people like you said, people that are individualists or, you know, free thinkers or not in the group. That's what this event was doing for the last 7 years, was literally mostly attracting those type of people. And really, you're right. I had to teach them how to connect, how to truly network versus just going to events and getting a card. You know what I'm saying? And then come back saying, I got 20 cards, you know, oh, there's 100 people at that event. Oh, I was success. And I'm like, you didn't make any real connections. So I would perform these events. The way I would act in the events was teaching them by example, even on how to truly connect. So it's very powerful what you said, because now I can't look that way anymore. Now I have to look more like city hall, like what the left is doing or what they've been doing.
Yeah, the other thing too is that the left doesn't play fair.
No.
They don't play fair, and the people on the right tend to have a conscience. A lot of them are Christians, and a lot of them have a sense of morality. And it's kind of like fighting a war in Vietnam, and you're the Americans. And you have rules of engagement. You cannot win a limited war because the other side is not playing in a limited war theater. They're using every tool at their disposal, and they don't care.
Yeah,
they will ruin you. Whereas somebody on the right will say, "Oh, I could never do that because, you know, that's not what Jesus would do. That's not what the Bible says to do."
Right.
So they've already got a foot in the hole.
Yeah.
So if people are going to, you know, go to the battlefield on those terms, you can't play the same game that you've been playing for the last 50 years. You know, I like here locally, we just had an election. When was that? Back in May. And I can't vote for the mayor now because I'm outside of the city. But I was looking at, and I ran for city council last year. Actually, it was 2 years ago I ran for city council. That was a really interesting experience.
Before 2020?
It was actually, let's see,
During?
It was during. I started in 2020, and then by 2021, it was like in May of 2021 is when the election was. So I started my campaign in 2020. It was an interesting experience. One of the things, have you ever run for office, Olga?
No.
So one of the things you'll find out is that if you come from an ideological place, and you come from that place strong enough, whatever that is, there are going to be people who will resonate with that. And especially in this community where a lot of people are Christians, I felt like this unconditional love and support in a way that I'd never, ever experienced before. It was really a trip. It's like, what? You're willing to do that? What, because you believe in me or what I'm saying? You know, you can even see it when somebody like Beto, who I think is ridiculous, but he has an ideological perspective that people in his world resonate to, and you can see the devotion. They'll do anything, right? And I think sometimes it's a good thing because it could be, if you're conscious and aware of that, it will change your life because you'll see that people do care. And if they believe in you, they'll go to the wall for you. And it could also be really, really dangerous because that's what happens with power and politicians in control and cults. But we had this last election, and I wasn't able to vote, but I knew who the players were. And I don't want to mention any names, but there was this one guy who was running for mayor, and amidst these other people, and he was, in my estimation, he would have been a train wreck, right? Because he's very idealistic and very naive, and a nice guy. Don't get me wrong; he's a nice kid and he cares. But he would have been a train wreck. And I'm looking at all the other candidates, and I kept telling my friends who could vote in city, you want to vote the train wreck in. You don't want the person that you think is the best candidate, because you want somebody in there that will create chaos. See, this is how the game is played. And they all poo-pooed me. They said, oh, that's really funny. Oh, that's really cute. So who did they vote for? They vote for who they thought the best candidate would be. And the guy's turned into a complete tyrant. A complete and utter tyrant. He's changed the rules of engagement at city council meetings. If it's not on the agenda, you can't talk. He changed the time and the place. Normally it was on Monday night at 6:30, right here in town. Now he moved it way out of town at Tuesday morning at 9:30 onto this golf course. Right? So this is what you got. You got the guy that was, what you got is you got the guy that was the smartest. But what you really needed was the guy who's going to create the most chaos. And that's how the game is played. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I
That's
agree.
how it's played. And the people on the right don't understand that. This is to their credit, right? Because their lives are engaged in morality and virtue. And those are all wonderful assets to have. Right? If you have a son or a daughter, you want them to marry somebody who has morality and virtue. You don't want them to marry somebody who's going to game the system. That's the last thing you want. But let me ask you a question really quickly, because you spurred like a conversation in my head about your assistants or your interns and the dating drama. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. Do you ever ask them what characteristics they're looking for in a partner?
Oh my God. Great question, Robert. It's exactly what I do, but I even do it even with my clients that are adults and in their 40s and 50s. And they keep saying, I'm successful, I'm educated, I got a boob job, I go to the gym, let's say a female client. But even my interns, it's all this superficiality that I keep getting, and I keep asking them, no, what are you looking for in the person? Like, tell me their characteristics.
Right.
Like, and they're baffled. And that's one exercise that I have to do all the time.
Right.
And here's the thing, they're doing that, what they call it, the hookup system, or the hookup, what do they call it? What do they call it? The younger generation, they do the hookup thing. There's a word for it. I've heard you say it before on your show too. This hookup culture, right? So it's like they go on these dating apps and they hook up with at least one person every day, sometimes 2 dates in one night. And they're just going through it, man. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like wholesale, and then their morale is depleted. Their self-esteem is gone. Right. They're frazzled. They're a total mess. So the first thing I always tell them is get off the app. Number one, I don't even care how strong you are, how old you are, get off the app. I just had somebody call me 2 days ago about how, hey, I just had a real low. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, what happened? Your mom okay? Your dad? Like everybody okay? Yeah. And I'm like, what happened? Your work is fine. Everything's fine. Yeah. What? She's dating on an app, and she's in her 40s. And she never had insecurity issues before. And now she'll go from like, I'm fine. I'm hot. I'm great. I'm successful. My family loves me. I got great friends. I'm loving life, right? I'm getting everything I want, the jobs I want, everything. And one person can get her to a deep depression like that. And it's not the only person.
Right.
And the young kids are, when I mean young kids, I mean 20s. Because I also don't think that the 20s today are the same 20s as in the 70s or 80s or 90s. I'm not kidding you. I'm dead serious about this.
I agree with you, yeah.
So they're almost like teenagers, and What do we do with, I mean, in the 20s, you have this ideology about everything, right? You're very ideological. That's natural of that age, of that decade. But the teens, it's like you don't even know who you are. You're awkward. You're finding yourself, all those stereotypical things that are true and part of growing up. But then they got these phones and they don't know who they are. And it doesn't matter whether they're left or right, whether they're in the middle, all of them. My interns, they all want a mentor, but at the same time, they're so addicted to immediate responses that if they come to me and they say, hey, Olga, can't afford you anything. I'm like, hey, you're working for me. You're fine. I told you can come to me for whatever you need. I'm here. And they're like, well, I'm dating this person, or I've been dating online, and it just always comes back to, I'm like, well, what do you really want? And they're like, well, I guess I don't know what I want.
Right. So it comes down to what are
But
their
they're looking
values?
for a job. They're
What are
looking for
their
money.
what are their values? Right.
So-
What are their values, their characteristics, their virtues, their traits in themselves that they understand?
Well, they don't. It's like,
They don't.
do we look good? Am I attracted to this person? And do they have a job? That's pretty much, that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
And you can say whatever you want.
That's why we're in trouble.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, where's your self-love? And that's where I went, especially in what I do. That's my core, self-love. Because even the word self-love implies, it's almost like people feel goofy to even say that, right? They feel kind of stupid, like self-love. I remember when I first launched my event and I couldn't find a name before I named it the charge station, because people would say, well, Olga, we go because of your energy. So that's why it was called the charge station, but that's another story. But I was going to call it a self-love party or something like that. And my friends are like, what kind of party is that? What is a masturbating party? Like, who calls an event a self-love event? And I was just like, I was just trying to be true to what my intention was. And I wanted to attract the right people.
You're being true to your sun sign. That's what you're being true to, right?
True. Thank you for saying that. But at the same time, I'm going, that's the problem. Just like, when you talk about sex, the stigma. I was like, we got to get rid of the stigma. Self-love is everything. Self-love and to a healthy level is your pride, your integrity, your dignity. You would never bow down. You would never allow peer pressure to get to you. And I come from a background where I was beaten black and blue, literally, from my own family. And so I remember when I left, and my audience knows if I probably already said it a couple times, but I swore the day I left my family, and I left before I was even of age, like legal age, 18, 17. I walked out of the restaurant on a Saturday night, 5 o'clock. We're getting packed. And I snapped. I'd already been thinking about what I'm going to do, and I knew there was no out. They told me, if you even try to leave, we'll get you locked up in a mental institution, and we could probably keep you under there until you're 21. I'm like, anyway. So for me, you know how you can flip? You can either believe everything you're being told that's bad and negative and you become that, or you do the opposite. And I vowed the opposite because I felt I needed love so much and I was beaten so hard, mentally, physically, psychologically, that I just the clients of my parents' restaurant definitely helped me a lot. Like they loved me and supported me, and they were watching the whole thing happen. So that definitely huge part, if not maybe 90%. I haven't sat down to really do the math, but I know that I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have the customers really support me and love me. And they were the only people that actually looked forward to seeing me.
Mm-hmm.
So the day that I walked off, I remember taking my apron off and I'm walking off and I said, I will be loved. That's the only thing that came out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I went out with no money in my pocket, out into the street. Never came back. That's another story. But that self-love to me is so important because every time I was in a bad relationship, a shitty job, you know what I mean? Any place that I had suffered, what got me through it, out of it, was self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, oh, I'm the bomb, I'm the shit. No. Thank God I had suffered enough that it gave me enough humility, because as a Leo, I'm sure I could have been totally egotistical, which to a point, just like when you were saying you were an asshole back in the day.
Not always, but I had my moments.
Well, when I was younger, I've always been a good-hearted person because, again, I've had always a connection with deep compassion, but I still had a big mouth and abrasive and raw, and a lot of people get their feelings hurt and whatnot, like I had mentioned earlier. But the thing was, that going through the self-love without having your ego, right, become a tyrant and whatnot. So I never became that because, again, I already had enough shit on my ass that I didn't have the heart to hurt anybody the way I was hurt. Yeah. But when I lost everything after I worked so hard, lived in 3 different countries on my own, paid for school, did everything by myself. And my mother said, you'll come back, literally with a Spanish accent, you'll come back like a dog with the tail between your legs. You'll see. You won't survive. They're going to eat you up. My mother, literally. And I'm like, you watch me. You watch me. You watch my mouth will be. And I have Mercury conjunct Mars in Leo in the 11th house.
Right.
And as you know, I'm a Leo. So you already know where that goes. So I've been having to deal with that and try to utilize astrology to become the best version I possibly can be, given what I was given, right? Whether it's astrologically or the way I was raised, or also genetics. I do believe that genes have an effect on us as well.
Yep.
But yeah, basically, when I lost everything after I worked so fucking hard, against all odds, a woman, I managed not to get raped, or you know what I mean? Like, I managed to miss death a few times. Again, I take credit for that. I worked my ass off for that. But then when I lost everything at 29, that was a Saturn return. Mm-hmm. Thank God that I had met a colleague who made me into an interpreter at that time. I was already an interpreter, but not like on the legal sense or in the or for hospitals and stuff like that. But anyway, he was big into astrology. Well, he is an astrologer and he still does readings to this day, but and also a tarot reader. And he was the one that I knew about astrology in general, but I didn't know that much like the Saturn return thing, right? I just know the basics, the houses, the signs, the typical stuff. And he says, you're going through Saturn return. Just, you'll be okay. Just try to transmute the negative energy into positive things. And I'm like, and I lost everything. So when I lost everything, it was the first time I realized I had an ego. That's the point I was getting at. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I have an ego? No, not me. Because of course, you're angry when you lose everything, when you feel you've been wronged. You know, the ego popped up and I couldn't believe that I had this side in me, that I wasn't much of an asshole as any asshole. And I was like, I knew that, but I knew that like intellectually. But to see it in yourself in the mirror. So that was, you're talking about that self, that, you know, what do I say to the interns? These are the stories that I will share with them over and over again on, you know, why I'm so passionate about self-love. Because at the same time, people, you know, try to take advantage of me as well when I was in my worst. People were trying to put things in my head. Women would say, you know, I think you're a lesbian. You're just in denial. Like all these things, you're already messed up. And then you got all these people telling you what you should do, should not, who you are. People taking advantage of the fact that I was in a great moment of need. So then and I would be a, you know, the pleaser type of person. And next thing you know, I'm like cleaning their house and I'm their maid. And I'm running their errands and I'm going, wait a minute, I left my family. And I'm going to be a slave to this person or this friend or whatever. Right. So it was literally, besides astrology, definitely astrology, or just that connection with the divine, because I always believed in God. But again, when I lost everything and ego took over, honey, I told God to go fuck himself. Seriously. And it's kind of weird for me to say that now, because whether you call God a thing or an energy or a superpower or an intelligence, I know now without a doubt. Before I didn't have a doubt. And then when I lost everything, I'm like, where are you, bro? What? I've been a good person. What are you doing to me? So Saturn return helped me realize, hey, this happens to everybody, you know? Yeah. And then, so that helped the pain, but I still had to do the work. And I'm telling you, at the end of the day, it was the going back to that self-love. So that's what I find. They don't even know what love is. They don't even know what love is, period. And then if you ask if they love themselves, how are they gonna even look for somebody with certain characteristics? When to them it's, do I look good?
Right.
Did I get a college education? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not on drugs. And I get that, and it's all valuable. But at the end of the day, it's like, who are you? Where do you want to be? I don't know.
Well, in some ways, it's
Kim Kardashian.
it's a byproduct of a secular, secular humanistic upbringing, right? Like if that person had some form of, and I'm not here to like push Christianity, but if they, let's say they had some form of Christian faith, they wouldn't be all tied up in those kinds of knots.
I agree. I agree.
There are different knots they get tied up in, but not those knots.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is that there would be one love, right? Like you as a person would love God so much that you wouldn't want to let God down. So that would be everything from taking care of yourself to treating other people right, to do the best that you could in whatever kind of occupation or field that you were in, because it was all a reflection of your relationship with the divine and God.
Right.
So the self-love is a byproduct of a higher love, and the higher love becomes a way to amplify the love of the self. They're all connected together, right? But people in our culture today don't have that. So they have what we would call lesser gods, like the Kardashians, who you brought up, or fill in the blank of the current thing, right? So anyway, we could probably just hang out here for the next couple hours, but I'm sure you got stuff to do.
Well, did I answer your question? I know I gave you the long answer.
Yeah, I think so.
About the character, right?
Because I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
The young people, like, I have a son, so we have these conversations every now and then, and about women. And my advice.
Is he dating, married? I'm just curious.
Well, he's in his first year of college. He just shared with me that he's now using astrology to pick up chicks.
Smart.
Even though he's not into astrology, he's just. In fact, you'll like this. He told me that here's your hookup. The other night, he hooked up with a Leo. And I said, did you just tell her everything she wanted to hear about herself? He said, yeah. And I said, oh, you learned from the master, didn't you? He says, yep.
What's his sign?
He's a Pisces.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So, we have these conversations. And this is the problem, is that parents don't have conversations, the right conversations, with their kids. And I've lived a little, so I kind of understand this realm. I said, look, if you are going to hook up with somebody permanently, the first thing you need to do is figure out if she likes her father. If she likes her father, respects her father, and loves her father, that is huge.
I always say that.
Yes,
my mother taught me that.
Or if you're a woman, you want to hook up with the guy that loves his mother.
Yes.
Not in a weird way.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But when they get crazy with their mothers, I'm like, get away from me.
That's a little too much, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a guy, you need to, and this is getting harder and harder, to find women who, number one, are a byproduct of a two-parent family, and number two,
right,
hold their father in esteem because he is either the head of the household or has demonstrated certain traits that are admirable that she'd want to find in another man.
Absolutely. And
that's getting harder and harder. But if you find that person, that's a person that you need to really circle. And then the second thing you need to be able to have is you need to have commonality. You need to have things that you share together, whatever they are, whether it's the same kind of music or an interest in sports or anime or whatever, right? You don't want to have somebody who has really divergent interests. And they could have some divergent interests because you could learn from them and vice versa. So you need to have, common interests together. Mm-hmm. And that other person, if it's a woman, she needs to be able to love and respect her father. Then you have the basis of something. You have the basis and foundation of being able to connect with another person at that point. And the rest is up to you and her, or her and a guy, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And people don't really have those conversations. And if they do, how many people come from broken homes? I mean, I've been doing astrology for a long time. I can't tell you how many clients I've had who've been sexually molested. The stories I hear are off the charts. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm actually surprised that a lot of these people just keep their shit together and live.
I know. You're still right.
Yeah, it blows my mind. I'm like, you went through all that? wow,
Yeah.
that's something.
Yeah. I think I'm blessed compared to them. Honestly, like that.
Yeah, we've all had trauma. I mean, let's
Yeah, but
face
that
it.
level, you know, that's
But
the
there's literally
hardest.
there's I've run across. I knew this guy one time. He's a really good friend of mine, and like he was an Aquarius. He was like the coolest guy, but every now and then a dark cloud would come over him,
Mm.
and it had a lot to do with his past. And he wound up. I shouldn't tell this. He let's just sit.
Like
No, I'm just trying to figure out where the line is. He did something that nobody should ever have to do, and he did it out of love. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
And that thing wrecked his life for years. And I watched him struggle with this event. And yet, you know, he would come back and kind of rise like the phoenix and carry on. So the amount of trauma that people carry in a lot of ways is absolutely heroic. You know, it's just absolutely heroic what they have to go through. So
it is.
We're here now at this time of year in the season of Sagittarius. It's like, well, what are we thankful for, right? And I think if we could all find at least one thing we're thankful for, you know, we can plant that as a seed moving forward.
Running water. Like
running water,
heat.
that's
Europe
exactly.
is not going to be having some heat, supposedly.
Right. So be thankful for something and build on that.
I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for everyone in the chat. I'm thankful for anyone that leaves a comment. I care. If nobody's told you they love you, I love you. You hear me? You think I'm kidding, but I'm not. Robert, I'm going to wrap it up because I won't stop.
Yeah. I kind of went down that path so you could take that cue and start to wrap it up.
Yep. You're a pro. Thank you.
Olga, you're great. You're going to be huge. I can tell.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. Oh, Lord. Well, I'm going to be calling you.
Just remember
I'm going to be hiring you.
Remember me when your name is up there in lights, Olga.
Oh, no. We're going together, hopefully.
All right.
This journey, this one guy gave me this corny line years ago. He was like, it's your world. I'm just walking through or walking by or something like that. And I'm like, as corny as that sounds, I like that. It makes sense because you're right. You're just coming by. Right. So that's not going to happen here.
Good.
Not unless, you know, you're too busy. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen and ladies, everyone in the house, in the live chat, or watching this replay, much love. Once again, Robert, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, awesome. Chat. Nice meeting you.
Guys, until next time, much love. And I'll talk to you soon.